Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Um, so hopefully you can see my screen. Just a couple of things to cover first of all. We will be doing a Q&A session at the end. So if you've got any questions, you can use the Q&A buttons at the top of your screen. So feel free to post your questions in there. And then at the end of the session, we can take a look and see if we can answer those questions for you. Somebody will also be in touch with you after this session to obviously, discuss the Sage 200 platform with you. So I hope everybody's having a great day. So just to get started, so hopefully you can see my screen at the moment. Now, what we're going to be covering today is the Sage 200 Professional product. Sorry, the Sage 200 product. So there's two main versions of Sage 200. We have Sage 200 Standard and we have Sage 200 Professional. Now, as you can see from the information on the screen, there's various modules and integration points available to both products. Sage 200 is the slightly larger product, so it has more functionality available to it. But you can see for both products, we have things like financials, commercials, Office 365 integration, integration with the Microsoft Power Platform, and we also have things like, Sage CRM integration. And then for the professional product, you have things like manufacturing, as well as other add-ons available as well. Now, today we're going to be showing you the Sage 200 Professional product. So Sage 200 Professional can be accessed in a few different ways. You can either choose to have it hosted on your own server in your environment, or you could have it in a private cloud server, or we have something called Sage Partner Cloud, which is actually a cloud offering through the Sage Business Partner. So then we will manage that hosting platform for you. Okay, so that just gives you kind of an overview of the Sage 200 product itself. So I'm just going to switch to my other screen and then I'll take you through the actual Sage 200 product now. So this is the actual Sage 200 product itself. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the product. We'll talk about some of the functionality and it'll give you a flavor of what the actual Sage 200 Professional Suite is like. So one of the great things about the Sage products is the user interface is very user friendly. A lot of Sage products very easy to use, especially if you've got customers coming from other Sage solutions. It's very easy to onboard with another Sage solution. So what we can see here is we've got the Sage 200 Professional client, and then we have our main menu down the left hand side. So in terms of navigation, it's very easy to navigate. You can simply expand the menus, and as you'll see, the different ledger menus are all formatted in a similar format. So again, it makes it easy to navigate through the system. Okay. What you can see in your main menu is controlled by what we call roles and features. So when you configure the system, you can define what users have access to and what permissions you want them to have within those modules. So for example, you might want to give somebody access to the sales ledger, and you might want them to be able to view customer accounts, but maybe you don't want them to actually amend customer accounts. So you can control all of that via your roles and features, and that'll define what menu options they have down the left-hand side. Okay. Now, what you can also do is you can set up favorites. So again, to try and save you time as you're navigating through the system, you can add favorites to your favorites list just like you would in your web browser. And then you can just simply click on those menu items and it'll take you straight to that particular item. So if there's screens you're working with on a regular basis, just add them as a favorite, and they can be lists, they can be workspaces, they can be individual screens, and it'll just take you straight to that screen then once you click on it. Okay. You can have as many favorites as you want in there as well. Now, what you can also do is you can search your menus. So if you're not quite sure where something was, you can just put it into the search bar and then it'll return any values that match what you've typed in. And then again, you could just jump to that particular item if that's what you're looking for. Okay. Now, in regards to the Sage 200 platform itself, so it's a customizable platform. So things like our buttons, they can all be customized, and this can be done per user. So obviously, not every button or not every list or column or anything like that may be relevant to each user. So each user can customize the user interface to suit their working requirements. So here we can see I've got everything ticked, so everything is enabled, but I could simply just untick these and then obviously it would remove them from my screen. Likewise for your list views as well. As we're navigating our list views, you can see the wealth of information that we have available, but again, I can pick and choose which columns I would like to see within each module. And you could do that in your nominal ledger, which most people might refer to as the general ledger, and you can do that in your other lists as well, like sales ledger list, purchase ledger list, etc. Okay. We can also just change the sorting order of our columns. So if we literally want to just change where they are, we can just drag and drop them to move them around. Obviously, you can click on your columns to sort by those columns. We can also search our lists. So if you know kind of what you're looking for, you can just type that into the filter box, and then you can filter what's on the screen based on that. And you can also set up predefined filters as well. So you can define criterias for those filters. And then once you select that filter, it'll automatically filter the list. So again, that can be really useful if you're working with like sales ledger accounts, purchase ledger accounts. Maybe you want to see something specific, then you can obviously just filter those screens then based on that particular value. Okay. Um, Now, the other thing we can do um, is, like I said, we can customize all the lists and everything like that, and it'll remember it each time you log in as well. So you don't have to do it each time. Every time you log in, it'll be the same as what you had it looking like before. Okay. Depending on your user role as well, you do have the ability to edit menus as well. So again, you could actually change the sorting order of the menu as well if you wanted to. Okay. So if we take a look at our nominal ledger, which like I said is otherwise known as our general ledger, we can see here that we have our nominal. I'm just going to go back to viewing all accounts a moment. Sorry, I'm just going to type. Okay, so we have a list of nominal accounts here. Now I'm looking at my sales nominals. So the way Sage 200 works is it allows you to have a 3-tiered nominal system. So you can see here we have our header 31100 sales account. However, we can also break it down by cost center and department. So when you configure your system, you can configure those cost centers and departments in the system. And then as you're setting up your nominal structure, you can then basically break it down by cost center department. So, you might want to look at sales as a whole. So you could just look at 31100. However, you might want to break it down where maybe cost center is a particular office and department is a particular department within that office. Maybe you want to know what the spend is or what the forecast is or whatever it may be. You can break it down with that cost center department. Okay. What we can also do as well, if we look at one of our, if I just change this sorting order back a moment, if you look at one of our nominal accounts, we can also set up budgets. So when we look at the actual nominal account itself, we have two tabs of budgets. So we've got budget this year, and we can see the different types of budgets that we can have in the system. And when you specify the budget, you can see what your original budget was, you can see the budget this year, and then you can also see the balance this year. You can also set up future year budgets as well. So you can set up to 5 years in advance future budgets. And again, for those future year budgets, you can see we can either have monthly, annual, or group. Okay, so we can set up those budgets in the system. If you did have a requirement to use purchase requisitions, that is also available, and you can also link those two budgets as well. So you can have combined nominal budgets linked to your purchase requisitions. Okay. Then another thing we have in the system is what's called analysis codes. So if we take a look at a particular sales ledger account, for example, we can see that on this sales ledger account, we have some additional fields here in the system. Basically, what Sage 200 allows you to do is with the professional product, you can have up to 20 analysis code fields per ledger. So, you could use like 20 on your sales ledger, 20 on your purchase ledger, 20 on your nominal if you wanted to. And with those analysis code fields, they can either be free text or they can be drop down. So they can be really useful, especially on things like the sales ledger and the purchase ledger. You can think of them effectively as additional fields. So it gives you the ability to obviously enter information against those records, but also you can then filter your lists and your reports by those analysis codes. So you can see here, this is actually analysis code 1, which we've renamed to account manager. And this is basically a drop down, and we have in here the list of our account managers. So obviously I can see that this account, Abbey Retail, belongs to Phil Simmons. So again, if I wanted to then find all of the accounts that belong to Phil Simmons, I could simply just either filter my list, or I could run a report, filter by that analysis code, and then obviously that would return all of those accounts showing me that value. Okay. You do also have on the nominal ledger something called transaction analysis codes as well. So even if you're posting to the same nominal account, if you wanted to break down and analyze those individual transactions further, you could use something called nominal transaction analysis. And again, you can filter those on all of your reports and everything as well in the system. Okay. So some additional functionality that we have in the system as well. So obviously you've got your basic ledgers, you've got your nominal, you've got your sales ledger, your purchase ledger. We do have other ledgers as well. For example, if I go back to my main menu, you can see we have stock control. For those people looking to use like a commercials side of the platform, you also have invoicing, sales order processing, purchase order processing, and bill of materials. So you can see there is the functionality there available if you require it. However, some other features we have as well is bank feeds. So if you regularly, reconciling your bank statements and so on, what Sage 200 gives you the ability to do is actually link to your bank account. So if you're using one of the kind of standard supported bank accounts, like HSBC, Lloyds, NatWest, for example, you can actually download that bank statement from your bank account, and then you can actually get the system to auto match those transactions for you, and then obviously you can go through and continue to reconcile those transactions. So again, it's a great way to save time instead of going for that manual ticking exercise where you're printing off your statements and you're manually ticking it off. Sage 200 is effectively doing that work for you. Okay. Another area we have in the system as well is supplier payments. So if you are obviously paying your suppliers by backs, or you want to do like, generate your remittances and so on for those backs payments, what you can do is you can set up what's called payment groups in the system against your suppliers. You can define those payment groups. And then when you want to do your payment run, you can use what's called the generate suggested payments routine in the system. That will basically look at the suppliers that you owe money to, and it'll suggest which ones it feels that you should be paying. Obviously, you can then pick and choose which ones you want to pay. And then when you come into here, you can either then pay an individual supplier, or using your payment groups, you could pay multiple suppliers at the same time. And you can see here we have the option of our payment groups, which again, they would be configured against the actual purchase ledger account. Now, the other really good thing about your analysis codes as well is even when you are paying multiple suppliers via these payment groups, you can also filter within those payment groups by analysis code. So if you've used an analysis code to prioritize your suppliers, you might have gas, electric, you know, phone charges, whatever, they might all be in the same payment group, but obviously you might want to pay the important people like your gas and electric and everything first. So obviously you could prioritize those then with an analysis code field, run the payment routine, but just choose to do it for those particular suppliers. And what that'll do is that'll generate a payment file. You can then import that into your banking portal and then obviously generate those payments. So again, it's just saving you time having to do that manually. Now, some other things we have around payments as well in the system. If you are sending customers digital copies of invoices, you can include what's called the Pay Now button on those invoice layouts. And then when you send the invoices to your customers, they can click on the Pay Now button, they can make payment, and it supports multiple payment providers like Stripe, Go Cardless, PayPal. And the nice thing is, if they choose to pay by that method, you can also then use your bank feeds to connect to those payment providers to then download and reconcile the transactions. Obviously, you've got that whole kind of back-to-back process, for actually getting those invoices paid and then actually, you know, downloading the statement and reconciling everything off in the system. Okay. Now, some other functionality we have in the system as well. Sage 200, the client itself, we're looking at here. Obviously, we're using that within the client. However, there is functionality in a web browser as well. So if you have users that don't necessarily need the full client and they just want to have, certain areas of functionality, we can actually do that in a web browser. So I have the browsers open down here. So the first thing we have is we have some workspaces. Now, the way these workspaces work is there's various workspaces for different areas within the system. You can be what's called a web user. They can just basically log into this web address and then they can access these workspaces, but they can also access reports. So if I just reselect my company, they can also access reports. So you can see the ledgers that we have down here on the left hand side. And basically we could choose which reports we want to run. And then obviously they could run and then print those reports within here. We can also access the workspaces. So if, for example, we want to see the sales workspace, so this is basically a summary dashboard in the system, we can access this workspace, the same workspace that we could see within the Stage 200 client itself as well. And you can do the same functionality. So we can hover over individual graphs. We could expand and see all the transactions that make up that particular value. And this is all being done in the browser. So obviously somebody could be in a different country, they could be out of the office, they could be doing this just in the web browser. And you can see with these workspaces, we have different sets of information we can see. I can see outstanding debt, I can see which customers owe me money, I can see the transactions that make up that outstanding balance. I can see things like who are my top customers, who are my worst paying customers, which customers are responsible for the largest percent of sales, and all of this can be viewed in your summary workspaces. Okay. The other area we have as well is what's called the web portal. So with the Sage 200 web portal, again, this is accessed via the browser, so you're not needing the full Sage 200 client. And within this web portal, we have different ledgers available to us. Now, this is continually being expanded by Sage at the moment, but at the moment we have access to the sales ledger, the purchase ledger, the nominal ledger, cash book, and then you also have things like stock control, sales order processing, and effectively access to your accounting system manager. Now within it, we could, for example, go into our sales ledger. We can see the customer list. Sorry, I just need to log back in again. Just do that really quickly. It times you out if you haven't done it for a little while. So let me just log back in. So if I go back into my sales ledger, I can click on my customer list and it's going to show me that same customer list I could see within the Sage 200 client. But again, I'm just viewing it in the browser. And again, from in here, I could amend the accounts, I could enter transactions, so there's quite a lot of functionality available in the web portal. So that's another area that we have in the system. Okay, I'll just jump back into Sage 200. So within Sage 200 itself, from a reporting point of view, you get 400 reports out of the box across the various different ledgers in the system. So if we take a look at some of our nominal reports, for example, we can look at our financial statement layouts. And if we do, let's pick our profit and loss month to date, year to date. When you run your reports, you can choose how you want to view that report. You can output either to your screen to view it in like a preview. You could send it straight to a printer, or Sage 200 also has something called a spooler, and you can basically send it to the spooler, and then anything in your spooler, you can just jump straight back in and reprint that at any time. Now, what we can see is when we're running, for example, our nominal report, here we can see those cost centers and departments that we were looking at earlier on our nominal ledger, where we could actually then break down that nominal analysis. So I could, for example, just say, I'd like to run a report just for, anything ADM as my cost center, or maybe I just want to run it for a specific department. And again, I can just pick that department, or I can say, no, actually, I want to run it for everything. Again, you can choose the basics like accounting period and so on. And it's also worth noting that all of the reports and layouts in Sage 200 can be customized, and we can also customize these criteria screens. So if there was additional information you want to be able to filter by, we can add that on here as well. So if I just run it for everything, click OK, it's then going to come up to the preview. Like I said, this could all be customized to have your logos and so on if you wanted to. And here we can see it's basically giving us our profit and loss, and it's grouping it by what's called the report categories, which is something you define on the actual nominal ledger. Now from here, we can do various different things. We could just print it, we could export it, we could email it and attach it as a PDF, and we can also do report to Excel and data to Excel. These will basically take a snapshot of the data that's in your report and pump it straight out into Excel for you. Report to Excel will keep it in the same format. Data to Excel will put it out in effectively like a raw data dump of the Excel data with all the columns. So again, if you wanted to do like pivot tables and charts and things like that, you could then do that in Excel. Okay. Another area of the system we have in regards to reporting is we have what's called Excel reporting. So the system comes with all of these Excel reports that are predefined for you in the system. So you can see we have various different things: budget versus actuals, customers, nominal. There's quite a few different reports that you have. Now I've got the budgets versus actual reports just open down here. So what these generate for you is effectively a multi-tab Excel report. So the first screen is obviously giving you an explanation of what you're looking at. And then we can see then as we navigate through the different tabs, it is splitting the data down for us. So we've got, do we want to analyze it by cost center? Do we want to analyze it by department? Do we want to analyze it by report category, for example? And on each of these tabular screens, we can actually filter based on the predefined filters. So we can see here, if I just zoom out a tiny little bit, you can see here that we've got all of our nominal accounts data coming through. However, if we wanted to say, let's just see period 5, for example, then it'll filter the data for me just for period 5. Maybe I just want to see for a particular cost center, or maybe I want to see just for a particular nominal type. And again, it's just instantly filtering that data then in Excel for you. So it's just doing some of that legwork for you. And then obviously there's various different Excel spreadsheets available in the system that you could run. Okay. Now, another area of the system we have as well for reporting, Sage 200 links to the Microsoft Power Platform. So another area we can use is with something called Power BI. So bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just going to switch my screen just so we can share a different screen. So hopefully you can see my screen still now. So what we have here is Microsoft Power BI. So we developed these Power BI dashboards. Now Power BI can link to your Sage 200 data. It's a web-based product from Microsoft. It's a very popular reporting platform. And the beauty of Power BI is you can then design or we can design for you the dashboards and the layouts to collect the information that you want from Sage 200. Power BI can also link to other systems as well. So if you had third-party systems, we could have a look and see if it could link to that, so you could pull the data together and combine it. But we have various different sets of dashboards in the system that we can see. So for example, the first dashboard we've got here is the sales dashboard. If I just make it full screen a moment. So you can see this is basically pulling out sales information from our Sage 200 system. It's showing, for example, here's our account managers on the left-hand side. What percentage of sales are these individual account managers responsible for, and what is the value of that sales? If you were using stock here, you can see that it's basically breaking it down for you by our product groups, which is basically how we group our products together in Sage 200. So we can see, okay, well, which products are selling the most, which ones are the most popular, making us the most money. And then on the right hand side, we can see the customers that are actually generating those sales. So we can see Festival Homes, we've generated £275,000 of revenue, and they are responsible for 5% of our sales. Now, what we can do in the Power BI dashboards is anything you click on will then filter everything on screen by that selection. So now we've clicked on Festival Homes, we can see that Jim Branning is the account manager, and there's that £275,000. We can see at the top it's showing us the financial years and periods that the data is that the values has actually been generated in. And we can see that it's also filtered our actual products, so we can see, right, well, which products did they actually buy and how much of those individual products was responsible for that value of sales. Okay, so that's just one example dashboard that we have from a sales point of view. And if I jump over here, we also have it from a financials point of view as well. We have many different dashboards. So this one we're looking at here is our profit and loss. Again, let me just make this full screen a moment. So here we can see, again, we could filter at the top by financial year. We could choose individual financial periods that we want to filter by. Again, we could filter by our report categories that we defined against our actual nominal accounts. Or we could just say we don't want to filter by just a particular nominal record. Okay. And then again, it's giving us an overview straight away of our profit and loss. It's showing us, for example, our margin, our gross profit, what our expenses are. And again, you can analyze this year on year. So as you start using the system, you could view last year's, you could compare it to this year's, see, are we up on expenses? Are we down on expenses? Are we up on profit, down on profit? So again, it's just giving you all that information at your fingertips in a nice, easy to view way, instead of running like individual reports and having to gather lots of pieces to paper and then present that to your manager. This is basically showing it to you all on the screen at the same time. Okay, these are just some example dashboards that we have. We also have ones for like age debt, age creditors. So again, let's make this full screen a moment. So here we can see our age debt. So it's going to show us all the customers that owe us money, and it's breaking it down by less than 30 days, 31 to 60 days. So, whatever your aging process is in the system, is then basically breaking it down by that. And again, we can see all the accounts that are making in that value, all of the individual transactions. And again, you can choose, what you want to do with these dashboards. If there's other information that you want to be able to get out of the system, other things that you want to be able to filter and report by, then we can do that in the system as well. If I just change, I just realized I've just got the one account here actually. So if I just do it for all accounts, there we go, that's a bit better. So now you can see we've got a bit more data coming through. You can see obviously it's populating the different graphs. Again, I can click on the individual items and then it'll filter what's displayed on the screen. So if I just say less than 30 days, so we can see these are the 4 accounts that currently owe us money for invoices that are less than 30 days. Okay, and then again, we can see all the values and everything, and we can see obviously the graphical representation here of the individual accounts as well. And again, you could filter all of this by things like transaction reference, due date, specific customers, etc. Okay. And the last one, just to show you as well, is we also have the same for aged creditors as well. So very similar to what we're looking like for the aged debt. This one is just going to obviously break it down by our creditors. So again, very similar to what we just seen. It's breaking it down by our aging periods. And then again, we can obviously filter by individual suppliers, and we can see the transactions that make up those values. And again, this we also have dashboards if you are looking to use the commercials product, if you were using like manufacturing or anything like that, barcoding and warehousing, any of those other suites. If you wanted to be able to report on that data, Power BI can do that for you as well. Like I said, it could be analyzing stock. You could see, what stock is selling better than other stock compared like year on year, month on month. So it gives you the ability to see all that kind of information on the screen. Okay. Tracy, have we got any questions from anybody?
So Rob, Paul's just asked if we can demo the purchase order in.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen again now. So purchase order processing. If we jump into here, so with purchase order processing, I mentioned earlier that you can do purchase requisitions. So if you had a requirement to do purchase requisitions, you could always start with your staff raising purchase requisitions, and they can actually be raised in the workspaces screen in the browser. So they don't
Rob,
even
that's
need a.
specifically what Paul would like to see, how they raise requisitions and how
Oh,
orders get approved. So
oh,
if you can
okay.
just
Yeah,
go
no
through
problem
that
at all.
bit.
Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, so purchase requisitions. So when we do enter purchase requisition, here we can see, we can type in what we're looking for. So we can either do free text lines. So I could just type in, whatever it was that I wanted. So pens, for example, and I could say I wanted 10 of them. I can choose when I want them by. So maybe I need them by the end of the month. However, what you can also do is if you've set up stock in the system, you can actually then filter by your stock. So if staff are regularly ordering stuff or the same kind of stuff all the time, it's worth setting up the stock, those items as stock, because then obviously you could analyze, right, well, what are people ordering on a regular basis? How much is that costing us? What are we spending, etc., etc. Just makes it a bit easier to analyze as opposed to just free text all the time. But you can do either or. So we could select the item. We could say maybe they just want one, maybe they want it by, the 18th. You can specify whether the user needs to fill in certain information. So do they have to specify the supplier? Do they have to specify the price, etc.? But they don't have to, because obviously not everybody may know it. So we'll leave that blank for the moment. We'll just add that line. Maybe they need to add a comment. So we might want to say, needed for office main room, something like that. Okay. And then what we can do, we could add additional lines as well if we wanted to. We could save it as a draft and come back to it later, or we can submit it. Now, I'm doing this within the actual client, but we can do this within the web browser as well. So like I said, they could just have a web license, which is a cheaper license, and then they could just be doing it through the actual web browser. But if I just submit it, that's now submitted my purchase requisition. Okay, and I can see as a user, here's my purchase requisition. So you can see it's got today's date, 007, and I can see that I've raised that. And at the moment, it's not been rejected and it's not been authorized. Now, again, if I just jump into my browser and just go back to my workspaces, if I just jump into here, and if I just go to purchase order processing and my requisitions, so I can see that I'm seeing the same thing, but from within the browser. So just like I looked at in the client, there's my requisitions. And again, I can see the status of it. Now, what we can do is within the workspaces, you can enter requisitions and you can approve requisitions from within the workspace. So again, you don't need the full client to be able to do that. So here I can see that purchase requisition 007. I can see it was raised by Rob. I can see what they're asking for. And then obviously you can see all the different information if they'd filled it in, like, price, quantity, etc., etc. But then what I can do, I can simply just tick the box and I can say authorize. It'll then tell me up here in the green box that it's then been authorized. Then the only bit that I do need to do in Sage 200 is actually generating the purchase order. So if I jump back into Sage 200, and I've got an option here that says generate purchase orders from requisitions. So if I click on that, That'll then, if I hit search, it'll display all of the requisitions that I can actually convert. So everything that's been authorized. So before I can actually convert it to a purchase order, I need to actually fill in some additional information. So, you would be the person that then knows what the supplier is. I might say, yeah, it's going to come into my home warehouse. Again, if you're using stock and you have locations, Sage 200 supports multiple locations in the system as well. And then I can say it was one and it's going to cost me £25. Okay, it's automatically filling in my nominal code because that's being picked up from the stock item itself. If you didn't know that, maybe it was a free text item, you could then fill in the actual nominal that it needed to go to as well. Okay. So now we've added that line. Again, if there was multiple requisitions, you could do multiple requisitions at once. If those multiple requisitions are for the same supplier, it would then generate one purchase order and obviously have all of those lines on the one purchase order. If they're for multiple suppliers, it'll then generate you multiple purchase orders. But if I just click generate orders, it'll then just tell me that it's generated the purchase order in the system. Just wait for it to process that a second. There we go. So it tells us it's been saved. And then if I go to my purchase order list, I can now see that I have a new purchase order for AB cookers. And if I just take a quick look at that, you can see there's our whiteboard, £25 for a quantity of one. And then obviously now you're in the purchase order processing module. You would process it as a normal purchase order. So we can see, we could maybe add additional items if we needed to order something else than supplier. We could enter things like the supplier reference. We could change the requested date if we wanted to. And then we've got things like, where it's going to be, what the supplier details are. We could actually specify additional analysis codes as well on this purchase order, because maybe we want to analyze it and review it at a later date or something like that. Okay, so you can process that purchase order. Now it's worth noting as well that we can go through the purchase requisition authorization process. So you can have one person who's a requester who submitted it, you can have multiple people as authorizers, and then you can have another different user, or they could be the same user, that can then generate the purchase order. What you can also do with your purchase order processing is you can actually have purchase order authorization as well. So if you do need to have somebody else that authorizes the purchase order, or you just maybe need to authorize them if they're over a certain value, you can have that purchase order authorization as well. Okay. If I just see if I've got the column here, authorization status. So you can see this one is not required because I don't have any rules set up to say that this requires authorization. You can see here that this one's saying it's authorized and because of the value. So I might have a rule set up that says if it's over 10 grand, it also requires somebody else to authorize it. And you can set up those purchase order authorization rules in the system. And then from here, once it's a purchase order, you would go through the kind of normal process. If it was an item, you could then actually confirm the goods received. You could then obviously record the invoice, go through the normal purchase order process. Like we mentioned, we can do individual demos for customers as well, so that if there's other areas of the system that you'd like to see in a full demonstration, then obviously let us know, and we could take you through the whole product if you wanted to see, like, maybe you want to see the whole back-to-back process, sales order, stock, purchase order, anything like that. We could do that as well. But hopefully that's answered your question.
Thanks, Rob. There's no other questions at the moment.
Okay.
I think we can probably end the session there.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I hope you found it useful. We'll share the recording with you afterwards, and obviously we'll get in touch. And obviously you've got our email addresses, so if you've got any other questions, then please get in touch. Thank you for your time.